Hi, welcome to GenAI Live. My name is Wayne Sachs. I'm a senior manager of solutions architecture here with AWS, and we're here to talk with our partners, um, and um, and 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 Amazonians in general about generative AI and what we're doing with our customers in the space. Uh, Today, joining me as always is Brian Cherry. Brian.
Welcome to Gen AI Live. My name is Brian Terry, and I'm a senior partner SA. I'm on the Bedrock go-to-market team, so I focus on helping partners enable customers to migrate onto AWS Bedrock. And if this is your first time joining us, we're super excited you're here. This is where you find the latest and greatest information about Gen AI.
There's always something new happening in the space, and I think there were some updates on Nova just recently. Um, am I right about
Yeah,
that? I think I am.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Nova, the Pro model has enabled latency optimized inference. So what does this mean? Well, basically, when you enable that, the latency on the inference actually speeds up. So if you have applications that are latency sensitive, basically when you enable that, I mean, it can give you inference faster. I mean, that's kind of what we always want, right? It's just faster information. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
have you have I mean, this is brand new, so I'm guessing that you haven't had a chance to talk to customers about this one yet.
Yeah, so I have talked to a few partners about it, and they're super excited about it. I mean, anything that can improve the performance or latency of these models, I mean, I think it just helps everyone in general.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exciting. I love it. Um, in other news, like Alexa Plus just came out, and I know that that's like
Uh,
a little bit to the side of what we do and talk about usually, but it sounds really awesome. Like imagining this storefront of agents off to do all sorts of tasks on our behalf through the Alexa interface. Like I know that I have at least a dozen Alexa-ish devices somewhere sprinkled throughout my house, and I can only imagine all the things that we're going to get to do with it. It sounds I don't know. I'm excited to try it out, play with it.
yeah, yeah, that's an insanely new feature. I actually have all my TVs enabled with Alexa, so I'm very curious on how this is going to work. Like I'm watching a show, and then I can ask it questions about specific things about the people in the show. So I think this will be interesting. I'm super excited to try that new feature.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Imagine like the sort of like all the computing power of the world, like the most like cutting edge advances, and I can be like, tell me more about that baseball
Whoa,
player
like
on the game that I'm watching.
well, I'm sitting on my couch. This is changing everything. This whole Gen AI thing is just changing the whole game of how we even use tools or how we relax or how we find information. So it's super interesting time.
Yeah, it is. Shall we bring on our first guest? Let's do it.
Absolutely.
So today we've got Ilan Geller from Accenture to join us, talk a little bit about what you're seeing and doing uh, with AWS and with customers. But before we get into that, you want to just tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, great. And thank you again for having me. It's an exciting opportunity to discuss all things Gen AI as we like to do. Um, yeah, my name is Ilan Geller. I am a managing director from Accenture. I am part of our Center for Advanced AI, and I am the global partner lead for AWS. So I work on all things with AWS to make sure that we are working together to achieve our goals with our clients, particularly around data and AI, and most recently, obviously, a deep focus on the Gen AI capabilities that we're going to talk about today. So excited to be here. Looking forward to a conversation, Wayne and Brian.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
super excited to have you.
Yeah, and I don't usually talk about this on the show, but I work with you every day, so it's great.
Great.
I get to work with you a little more every day. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. So
Excellent.
I know this is a fact, and this is kind of like a question that I could already answer myself, but I'm not going to. You talk with clients, all the time about generative AI and what they're trying to accomplish, what their business goals are looking like, and how they envision doing, augmenting what they do with these new tools and technologies. And I know that one of the things that we've talked a lot about is how do you scale this to enterprise? Like, I think we figure out how to like run a POC. It's pretty straightforward. But then that next step to like taking what you have conceptualized and getting it to enterprise grade is challenging for lots of reasons for lots of clients.
Mhm.
And I know you talk about this all the time with them.
Yeah.
Why don't you like give us a little thinking into your thinking on that subject?
Yeah, no, I think it is, as this evolved over the past 2 years, even at the end of last year, that was kind of the big thing that everyone was pointing at is, yeah, I've got some POCs, I've played around with it and I can do that, but I haven't gotten to production, haven't gotten to scale. That's one of the bigger pieces of conversation we have now. There's multiple different reasons. There's the technology components of it in terms of how are you going to set your platform foundation? How are you going to move this into production in a safe way, operationalize it? But beyond that, there are some other things that we come across that we have with conversations with our customers with there's the people component of it. How do we make sure that everyone is comfortable with it, aware of it, not threatened by it, but working with it as an augmentation. There is the responsible AI component of it, which is how do we establish our frameworks and our guardrails and make sure that there's a comfort to going in that path to production. A lot of the work that's done pre-production can speak to RAI or have that in the background, but it doesn't really come into the full blocking mechanism until you start to say, okay, I need to go into production, I need to go into scale. And so what I find is having that conversation early and upfront, all of these different topics helps when you're thinking about it from the beginning in terms of planning out. It takes a little bit longer to plan it out, but it allows you to unblock that before you get to that production and scale component. And the other thing that I would say is, as if you start to think about it and incorporate it early, you can start to work these streams in parallel. So you can start working on your responsible AI component and your people component and your data quality. That's the other component of it. You can start working on that in parallel so that once you have the POC itself built and it starts to converge in the timing of production, you don't have to stop everything, go backwards, and then start to figure out a way to integrate it and rebuild. So um, these are the main components that are blocking a lot of our customers. And so if we bring it up front, work with our customers together with AWS, figure out how we're going to be doing those things and thinking about and plan them in, that's what I see as the most effective way of not having that major blocking mechanism before you're able to get into production. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. I remember last reInvent, we were talking a lot about responsible AI. And you guys that like AWS and Accenture released some joint research on the subject, talking a little bit about how it was a sort of a critical foundational element for enterprise acceptance, scaling of AI generally. When your customers are thinking about responsible AI, like what do they think? Like it's a very broad term, I guess. And I'm
Mm.
curious, what do they think that is to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I would say is depending on the level of the organization that we talk to, it could mean different things and have different resolutions in terms of at the C-suite and so on. It's really a matter of I don't want to end up in the newspaper. I don't want to be caught off guard with this stuff. I'm seeing regulations. I just need to make sure I'm checking this box and making sure that I'm thinking about this because it's introducing risk. As you start working closer to the technology, you start hearing more, having more conversations around the technicality of it. How are these guardrails going to be implemented? What is the mechanism that we're going to continue to monitor things, and how is this going to be built into the application or the POC that's going to go into production? Um, I think it's important to have a kind of a solution across all those levels. But more broadly, what I would say is, uh, if it's part of that conversation and you're starting to think about it front, you can start layering it in there, both from a governance perspective. What are the questions? How do we bring everyone into the conversation to make sure we're thinking about it from all the angles? And then a lot of what we did with AWS in that joint offering is really start to make that real from a technology perspective as well. So you're not stuck on just setting the concepts and the guardrails, but you're really starting to be able to have a platform to implement it. So you remove that or reduce that risk, bring up the comfort level that that's something that we're handling. It might not be the full resolution because this evolves almost on a daily basis, but if you have the mechanism and the platform to be able to react and be able to build on top of it and monitor, that's really going to get you a lot of that comfort. And that's where we're seeing a lot of our customers wanting to go to fully integrate that capability.
Cool. So, as far as your customers, what kind of applications are they looking to build?
Right. So it's an interesting, yeah, it's another interesting question. What I would say is generally generative AI is starting to come up to find its way through everything. So there is from anything from a lot of the starting point is around knowledge assistant, RAG, and conversational AI to be able to ingest and think about all that, which is more of a standalone. You need the UI component of it, all the way through to building, more standalone applications that are gonna handle whole work streams of capabilities that are going to be a bigger use of Bedrock and starting to integrate those APIs. But there's also what our customers are asking us about is how do we think about it in some of these more out of the box capabilities. So things like SAP or ServiceNow or Salesforce that has a generative AI component as well, and how does that fit into the broader picture? So what I would say is it's starting to from an application, I think we're moving closer into the agentic space, and how do we think of it from that perspective to expand its reach and capability. But that doesn't mean those other areas go away. It's a holistic picture of how you're going to integrate it into your overall solutions.
So
Super interesting.
I'm glad you brought up agentic, because that's like the thing that we talk about. Like
Mm,
last year we were talking about models, right? Like it's models, 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 models. And this year it's agents. Like that's the talk
I
track.
agree.
But I think, like, again, agentic is like one of those terms that to me it means different things to different people. And so when you talk about agentic, I'm curious, how do you think of it? And then similarly, I'm also curious how your customers think of it, because I have to imagine there's scenarios where you're talking about it one way, they're talking about another. You got to, build a common language.
Yeah, agentic is definitely the topic of the moment as we evolve in the overall generative AI capabilities. I will tell you kind of what I'm hearing when I hear that brought up, and then I'll give you my perspective on how we're dealing with it. So, I had a conversation with a very high level CIO the other day, and a lot of the conversation, a lot of the words was agentic, but it was almost as though in their mind, the evolution went from Gen AI to RAG and knowledge back to agentic, and it's almost being separated from the whole concept of generative AI as well, because it's so front facing in terms of the language that we're talking about. So I believe that there is continued confusion in it. Plus, there's only so much brain space that we can give to the topic. So if this is the big one, then some of those other ones start to fall away, and this is kind of the front. So in the first place, I want to make sure that knowledge is understood as a continuation of the capability, right? So I always start all the way with data that turns into analytics, into data science and machine learning, and then we start to get into generative AI, and then with more advancements, once RAG was introduced, we open up a lot of that capability of controlling it and bringing in the enterprise knowledge and really providing that context. Agentic is the next path in that transition. And what I would say is that it really allows organizations to bring in that generative AI technology beyond the chatbots or those different components, and really be able to bring that capability against an entire workflow and capability. So that's kind of the first thing I would say. I think the big simplification of it is, and we of these kinds of terms, is like language is the new API, right? And what that means is that what that really saying is that whereas we've worked with automation before and modular API kind of calls and technology and frameworks, this allows us to put language into it, meaning that the individual utility or orchestrator or super agents can really interact with each other rather than just a simple call and receive. But really, when you throw reasoning in there, and the implication of all that is that you can really open up the capabilities that generative AI has within an entire workflow, and augment whole capabilities. Yeah, that's a lot of talking though, but
Yeah.
that's where I was saying is the big differences, and making sure you're thinking of it as the evolution to go deeper and add more value to your organization.
Yeah. I think it's really cool how like the industry is using these kind of agentic flows to do kind of synchronous and asynchronous tasks. Have you kind of seen that companies kind of want to do that kind of flow to where they have to kind of async task on these kind of using the agentic flow?
Yeah, I think and that's an interesting carryover from a lot of agentic came from, or the uses of or interaction with it came from a lot of the customer care space, and where the conversation really is critical. And that was a big step that happened in that evolution from asynchronous to synchronous. And I think that learning went into this concept of agentic as well, in the sense that it was an important concept that comes out of conversations that fills into beyond customer care into any automation or incorporation that you're going to do there. But I think it's almost a given at this point that that would be part of the solution, because you're almost so used to it from the previous experiences in the customer care space.
Wow, super interesting.
So I'm always curious. I think that agentic sort of opened our eyes to big, like, automation, workflow change, big change in the way that we manage processes or internal operations. Um, it was like all of a sudden we can now do things like do as opposed to react or consume. What When you're talking with clients, are they like, where are they thinking, okay, this is going to make a big difference to me? Because I think one of the things our listeners enjoy hearing about is like the experiences of people who've got like sort of a broad book of experiences. You just talk to lots of clients, or you interact with hundreds of clients. Um, what is possible today? Like, what are your clients saying? Like, okay, this is possible. It wasn't possible last year or the year before.
Yeah, I think the big change and the big capability or fundamental shift that this brings in or makes available is really that at this point it's intent focused, so it's goal oriented rather than very specific tasks that it can only do, right? So when you introduce an agent, you're almost introducing a new team member. And so whereas before, I think AI integration and agentic was thought of more in terms of evolution of like an RPA, where you're really automating a specific task or capability. The big leap that this allows us is to really provide it a broader goal, a less specific goal, but a broader kind of intent that you're trying to accomplish, and giving a little bit more autonomy to accomplish that goal by working and integrating with other agents. And so that shift specifically from goal and specific task to intent and a broader understanding of what you're trying to do, I think is the big shift that we're working with our customers to get them to understand and think about that, because that really changes how you're going to bring that forth into solving your problems. Now you can solve more broad problems rather than a specific chain within an automation scheme, if that makes sense. And that mind shift is what when we're having conversations and we're able to show that through some of our assets and accelerators, really kind of breaks the difference, and that opens up a whole new spectrum of ways to use it. Um, and again, the interesting thing that we find is the technology sometimes can move faster, but some of those roadblocks that we discussed before that get you to even use agentic at scale and at its full potential still requires, the basic components, the capabilities of the platform, the quality of the data as context. All those things don't go away, but the horizon of the capabilities opens up significantly.
Yeah.
Super interesting. Super interesting. So I see that there's a lot of requests maybe from your customers to do Gen AI applications, and they want to do it quicker. They want to do it fast and get to market. And within your organization, is your organization, your company using AI tools to create AI tools to make these workflows and get these products faster out for your customers?
Yeah, so I have two answers. So first, when when this latest wave came through, and we've been working with AI and LLMs before, there are a lot of components within our organization itself, within Accenture, that we are experimenting and using this. And that's everything from our corporate functions, our commercial functions, our marketing capabilities, all of those things, all the way to how are we going to serve our customers more efficiently. So we are constantly evaluating how are there tasks that we do for our customers on a regular basis in implementing or doing complex systems integration that we can use. And we are starting to incorporate agentic in that front facing and bringing that value to our customers, meaning we can do more things for our customers, in a more efficient way. And that gives us two offers. One, we're bringing that value to our customer, but also we're learning as we're doing that, because as we're building tools and building these agents and capabilities and working with our different partners to do that, we're learning and testing the bounds of that as well. So um, it's a nice cycle of benefit to do it. But when you're learning and pushing the envelope, there are definitely things that we are learning and make mistakes and be able to move quickly on. But there are learnings all along the path that we're doing. I mean, the amount that's changed in the past 3 months, let alone 6 or 8 months, is significant. And those are the key there is to be able to share them in avenues like this internally and be able to learn from that.
Awesome.
So one of the things I know that you guys, because I know you do it because I was part of it, was we put a bunch of time as we were trying ourselves to get our heads around, like, how does agentic going to play in our own thinking, something that we called Spotlight.
Mhm.
Like, I think it's very, like, easily sort of articulated, captured, agentic workflow. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about, like, what it is and why we built it, I think it might be a nice way to sort of put a firm wrapper on this concept of agentic workflows.
Yeah, Spotlight is one of those examples of where we've been working together and we've been kind of building something to be able to show it, but also wanting to use it. Spotlight, at a high level, is a multimodal agentic model-driven solution. And really what we're doing is we're ingesting videos, large amounts of videos of different qualities and length. And really, overall, what Spotlight will do is we'll ingest it, understand what's going on there in terms of the speakers, in terms of the content being displayed, in terms of the interactions. Not ingest it, understand it, break it up into pieces, and then be able to present a very simplified view to allow the user to create a prompt and say, hey, I would like a 3-minute video where every time agentic was mentioned in this hour and a half speaker live event, and then the output is a really smooth, very pristine kind of 3-minute video where you're starting to jump around. Now, what we found was if you're not explaining it and you're just doing execution, it's almost a little too magical and simplified, the things that are really happening in there, because under the hood, which is a benefit, right? Because it does it so seamlessly. But for our purposes, when we were trying to explain it, we had to break it up into the pieces. So, for example, the agentic component will have one agent do the ingestion, another utility agent to do the understanding and break it up into chunks, and yet another agent will actually do the first pass at putting that 3-minute clip together. And then we have another editor agent that will look at that and say, this clip needs to be a little shorter. You need to cut this from here, and it'll loop again through, and all of that will output a very seamless product that is going to get you kind of what your prompt wanted to. But there's a lot of interesting and complex things that are happening in the middle of it. So that was kind of what we built and the purpose of it. And again, one of the reasons we wanted to do it and why we were pushing it is we wanted to use some of the latest AWS technologies and prove it out and show what this looks like in something that would be meaningful and kind of broad. And so we've been working very closely on that, and now we're on to the next phase of it, where we're going to be integrating even the latest agentic capabilities within AWS and Bedrock, and experimenting with the Nova model. One of our learnings was, to be honest, like the way we had it before, it was just really expensive to run. It was fine for demonstrations, and it proved it, but we're seeing a lot of savings that we can do to help us make sure that we can get to scale with some of those newer technologies. But that's exactly why we do it, so we can make something real and work together to find something that's usable and explainable.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought was really interesting about that when we did it is it was so good at stitching the clips together that you didn't realize that it was not uh a continuous audio, a video stream. It was. So what, and obviously our listeners don't realize this, but what we did is we demoed it at reInvent, and we consumed the live feeds from the keynotes. And
Right.
all of a sudden we created these moments where it looked like, one of our leaders had this like really like pristine 2.5 minute talk track on whatever, but it was really like pulled out from across 10 minutes of their talk, but you would never have known. It was like almost, it was
Yeah,
wild
we almost
how
had
well that
we
looked.
almost had to slow it down and explain the pieces, because it was coming out that it was almost like, oh, this was pre-done. But we were doing it live every time because the prompts were different. So that was a good example of
Yeah,
how it could be very powerful, but needs to be explained to everyone underneath as well.
yeah. All right, so we've got I think one last minute, one last question, and we usually end with this one. I didn't prepare you for it. It's okay. You'll be able to knock this out of the park. You can't possibly forecast the future, because if you could, like, who knows, right? But what are you most looking forward to, let's say in the next 12, 18 months in this space? Because we all know it's going to move light speed.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I've been doing a lot of thinking about this. And again, this is just my idea, my thinking, and what I'm seeing around us. I think that the next big wave of how generative AI gets better integrated and allows us to use those capabilities is when we start interacting with physical. So I think around robotics, I think around any of those kind of IoT kinds of things, where there's so much more data there. There is such a big hurdle of communications and interacting with these physical things that Gen AI fits right into. I think that that's where the next big wave is going to go, and really open up a whole nother layer of capabilities and advancements that we're going to get to. I think we're going to move very quickly towards that, but I think that that's the next horizon of impact that will further allow us to incorporate this generative AI into so many different parts of everything that our customers are doing.
Yeah, spot on.
So, what a moment in time.
Yeah.
Ilan, thank you for
Yeah.
joining us. It was a pleasure. This 25 minutes went as fast as generative AI changes, super fast. It is always a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity again, for the technical issues. But looking forward to continuing to follow this as a listener rather than a participant.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So everybody, thanks for joining us. Stick around for the second half of the show. We have a speaker from inside of Amazon to walk us through some really cool stuff that's happening on the inside. And we'll be back in 30 seconds, in a minute. And yeah, so stick around.
Welcome back to GenAI Live, where you can learn the latest and greatest about GenAI, AWS, and some of its partners. So if you're new to this program, we're excited that you're here, and you can join us every week at 8 a.m. Pacific time to 9 p.m. Pacific time. So if you're on the East Coast like me, there's a 3-hour time difference or something like that. But same time, same place every week. And I'm here with my good friend, Wayne. And Wayne, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Thanks for having me again, as always. It's a pleasure to see you. My name is Wayne Sachs. I'm a senior manager of Partner Solutions Architecture here at AWS. And it's exciting to be able to talk with you, with our partners, with our colleagues about all of the things that we are doing in Gen AI space. Because
All right.
every week that we have this, I go in thinking, okay, like have we run out of material? And then it turns out that this it's like it's bonkers how wide and deep this space is.
I know. I feel like every time we do this show, I ask myself, "Am I behind?" Because things
The
change
answer
so
is
fast. Yeah.
the answer is yes. But it's okay because that's why we have partners. That's why we have our colleagues. You can only like our last guest made a good point. It's like you only have so much brain space, and so got like you got to focus on what you can focus on, and then trust trust our colleagues, trust your partners to be able to fill in for what you don't have brain space for.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So what I think a place where where we probably interact with generative AI technologies, maybe both very seamlessly and probably really regularly, even if we don't realize it, is in travel and hospitality. Um,
Yes,
I think there's a lot that's going on in that space, whether it's like booking tickets or I'm going on a vacation. I used some generative AI tools to create an agenda, for like an itinerary for me. It was super easy. It's pleasant. I think it's rapidly being infused with these new technologies. And
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's about making that experience better, for the customer to be able to book those vacations or to set those agendas. And people want to have it right, number one, and they want to do it quickly. So this is a perfect marriage in technology, and I'm super excited about it.
yeah, and like it's inevitably about a place or a thing that you don't have a lot of you don't have like a lot of contextual awareness. I'm visiting this city for the first time. I don't really know like where should I stay? If I stay there, what should I eat? What should I go visit? Like, how am I going to get from my wherever I'm staying to the first site that I want to see? Like, I don't know any of these answers, and it's great, like how fast and easy it is to build that web of knowledge for yourself using some of these new tools. Um,
Yeah, it's
which
pretty
brings us, I
exciting.
think, to our guest because
Yes,
here we
exactly.
are. Let's bring Moni. Come join us.
Hey, man,
Hey,
that I
We've
must
we've
say
teed
that
you up. We have teed you up. Tell
You
us about yourself.
you have done all my talk track, so I can just say bye and go. I mean, that was awesome. That was excellent setup for travel and hospitality industry. Nicely done,
Well,
and
thank you.
you queued me up nicely for some of the things that I want to talk about. All right.
So
I'm excited to hear what you talk about to make this like experience better for people that's booking
Yeah.
travel like myself.
All right, I will start with a brief intro. Brian, thank you for having me. I'm Moni Panchavadi. I'm the Global Partner Solution Leader for Travel and Hospitality within AWS. So what that means is I work with partners to build solutions for the travel and hospitality customers of AWS. So that will include industry solutions. It doesn't have to be AI, ML, GenAI, agentic industry solution. It also, I work with partners to build GenAI solutions, AI solutions, and now agentic solutions. So that's what I do. It's a very exciting work. Am I the first industry expert coming on your show?
Yes.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I'm very lucky to be working in this industry as a technologist because travel and hospitality is an industry that everyone connects with. From your intro, I mean, you understand the industry. What are the challenges that we face, our customers face? What are the solutions? I mean, as a consumer, we ourselves know some of the problems and some of the solutions. So it's easy to talk to people. I mean, I'm looking forward to this chat. By the way, I don't know if you noticed in the beginning there was a comment here saying, "Hi, I'm this person," a real human tuning in. That was a really cool thing. We are talking about agents, and now we are in a situation we don't know who is real, who is agents.
It's, it's, yeah. I mean, now we have to interact, like, especially at a distance. We're interacting with the thing that's on the other side of the medium from us,
Yeah.
whether it's a human or a chatbot. You don't necessarily know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Wayne and Brian, what I have planned for today is I want to talk a little bit about the industry. What is travel and hospitality means for AWS? What are some of the customers that we work with? And I know you have a lot of good audience. I want to bring travel and hospitality top of the mind for them. What are some of the use cases that we are solving for our customers in Gen AI and Agentic AI? And hear your feedback. I mean, since you all are travelers, we all deal with the airlines and the hotels, what are the use cases that you are seeing that although I work in the industry, there are use cases that I'm not in the top of the mind for you. I'm interested to know your feedback, and let's go from there. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Sounds good?
Sounds great.
All right. I have a deck for you. If we can start with that, it will help me move the conversation forward.
Okay.
All right, there you go. So, what is travel and hospitality for AWS? It includes multiple sub-industries. We have obviously airlines. We have lodging and accommodation, ground transportation. This includes rail, it includes Ubers, Lyft, things like that. We have airports and casinos and cruises. So, these are the different sub-industries that fall under travel and hospitality. And when it comes to travel and hospitality customers, the main use cases, we categorize that into two different categories. One is the customer experience. That's like we were talking about before. When we are about to experience a travel. For example, last year our family went to Greece. When you shared a good example. This was our first experience to Greece, so I had no idea. We had 10 days we were spending. What are the right things to do? Give me an itinerary. What's the then I pick and choose from there. So I use LLMs to decide what are the things to do, what's the best itinerary to do. So that's the customer experience aspect of it. Then we have this operational efficiency that happens behind the scene. How do the airlines and the hotels and the cruises make things work so the customer gets a good experience? How do they turn on their flights on time? How do they get the hotel room ready on time? Things like that happens behind the scene that we don't see, but that
help the customers operate in a very efficient manner so we get a best customer experience. That's how we categorize these the high level use cases. When we talk about Gen AI, agentic AI, we see the low hanging fruits are in customer experience. Just like you said, when someone is asking to build an itinerary for them, though that's where we are seeing the early adoption of Gen AI and agentic AI happening. The biggest impact, though, when it comes to revenue for our customers, happens within the operational efficiency. How can an airline run their flights most efficiently to reduce costs? It can be a call center. How can a call center agent help a customer most efficiently, maybe even without getting on a phone, using agents in a very automated manner? That's have bigger impact on the customer because it helps them save cost. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So when I dig a little deeper on these use cases, what are the use cases that I'm seeing for Gen AI? And now everyone is talking about agentic AI. So let's dig a little deeper on agentic AI. Where do I see it going in the travel and hospitality space? A lot of the early adoption and traction I'm seeing in the personal travel assistants. You all have this vision of, hey, I have to make a travel arrangement. I'm going to Austin next week. So I need to make a lot of things happen to make that travel. So I need a flight. So I have an assistant who to do that. Now with agentic AI and Gen AI, that's becoming a reality. So how do I take agentic AI in that direction? That's a lot of our customers are working in that space. And then travel concierge, right? So I'm at the airport. There's a picture here. I'm at the airport. I want to get to. I live in Atlanta, so it's a huge airport. I do the check-in. I completed my TSA. I need to go to T8. Hey, how do I go to T8? Or similar experience at a hotel. I checked in. I want to go to a room, or I want to go grab a dinner. What are the right places to see? We see a lot of traction for Gen AI and agentic AI in this space. Dig a little more deeper, but I want to pause. Any feedback? Any questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a consumer, right, of this, not as a provider, the ability to say to an LLM, hey, okay, I'm a family of four, I've got adults, children, whatever. These are the interests of the family. We like doing these things. Like, can you find me a flight that has four seats that are next to each other that leave at a time that works because spring break starts here and ends there? I have a budget of X, so can you make the trip as long as possible, but not exceed my budget? Like, it's a pretty complicated thing. It's like I've done this a million times. I've planned vacations, and it takes a lot of work to
Yeah.
kind of check all of the boxes and to balance all of the needs. And to be able to hand that off to an agent or a set of agents and just say, like, make it happen.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so appealing.
I know. Especially from a consumer perspective, that's the biggest value add from this Gen AI and agentic AI that I see for a consumer. That you cue me up really well for this slide that I want to. So, to Ilan, you asked a question. What do you see as an agentic AI versus Gen AI or ML app? So I don't judge anyone with the definition of agentic AI, but when I go in front of a customer, there's clearly a difference that I see. Let me just try to explain. You ask me questions and tell me if that makes sense. So if I take your example of, hey, build me an itinerary for my travel to Greece. I asked Claude, it gave me an itinerary. I asked you revise it, it gave me an. So it's not truly a agentic AI experience for me. It's like giving me a content. It's a content creation. I cannot go to a travel customer and say, hey, this is the agentic AI experience. That is not. So where I define a agentic experience is I get a response back from the LLM. Then, okay, I like that flight suggestion that you made. Can you go and book that flight for me? So when the LLM take an action from a response that it provided, from when I ask him to do, and it is able to go and make that booking, that's an agentic experience for it. So there's an action that happens behind the scene. That's what I define as an agentic AI experience. But again, that's how I call it. But when I go in front of the customer, the example that I have in here, a consumer is asking, hey agent, can you book me a flight Delta 01 for tomorrow? That's a very easy action for an agent to do. We have everything that we need. We need the date. We have the date. We have the flight number, and we know where it starts from and where it goes. So we can easily make a function call and make that booking. That's an easy action to do. To me, that's a function call. And that is not the kind of agentic use cases that our customer, the travel customers, are trying to solve for. So the type of use cases that I'm dealing with in the travel and hospitality space is what I'm showing in the right side. That is a more complicated problem. Wayne, to your point, how can we take some of this undifferentiated heavy lifting from the consumer, right? Say, hey, I want to do a 10-day vacation to Greece for me and my family in April. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen behind the scene. How can an LLM make that happen and take some of that workload off of me? That's where a lot of our travel and hospitality customers are looking at agentic AI to help them.
What I'm hearing you say, it's in your mind, agents is more than just calling a function, doing one action, and walking away. You're more talking about having these agents that are like really orchestrations for a larger task, right? They have this task that they have to do, and it's an orchestration within it that kind of flows. Is that the kind of thinking you're thinking around agent, a true agentic flow?
Absolutely. So let me dig a little deeper on what you just explained perfectly for me. So in this use case, where a consumer wants to do a 10-day trip, so the LLM will come back and ask, okay, you are saying your family, so that's a group of 4, right? So it will come back and get some clarification. Are you flying from Atlanta? Or maybe the agent already knows that. What are the dates that you want to do? It will ask clarification. It does a lot of orchestration up front to gather all the data. Once all this information is gathered, then it get to work. It cannot do that work in one step. First of all, it has to go and find what are the flight options that you have available for flying from Atlanta to Greece. Then it will come back to me again asking, hey, I found these flight options. Does it look good to you? So I already use an agent to find the flight option, and will come back and confirm. I said, yes, that looks good. Let's go and book it. It will go book it. And it will come back and say, okay, now the air booking is done. Now let's get into the hotel booking. What are the hotels? You are a Hyatt a loyalty member. Are you looking for Hyatt? So there is a lot of orchestration that LLM needs to do. Not just it has to interact with the consumer, and also has to interact with the backend system to make that action happen. This is where there's a lot of value add, not just for the consumer, but also for the customer behind the scene, be it Delta, be it United, be it Hyatt, be it Marriott. All these customers are seeing value in the agentic workflow with this kind of use cases. And
Yeah. I'm super excited to see like this is really evolving to where it can be really usable, because I myself as a business traveler, I'm not very good at booking my own hotels or doing my own travel, to the point where this is a true story. I flew out to the Bay Area and I booked the cheapest hotel ever because I'm frugal.
yeah,
And when I flew in and landed at 11 o'clock at night, I found out that the hotel did not provide a bathroom in my room. So that's how bad I am. And I
Oh,
booked a
gee.
hotel without a bathroom. So yeah, at 11 o'clock at night. So I'm super excited to see this technology grow, and maybe that help me from doing that in the future.
that's good to hear. Brian, on a lighter note, looks like you're frugal, but looks like Wayne is sitting in a four-season hotel. I mean, that's his hotel room that I am seeing behind the scene.
No, that's just that's my fun generative AI created backdrop when I was futzing around with Nova.
That's good. That's good. I want to take that use case forward a little more, and another area where we are seeing travel and hospitality customers can benefit from is one of the big pain points for the travel customers or and I say customers, not the traveler, but the airlines, the hotels. When a bad weather hits or a disruption happens, it can be an aircraft issue, mechanical issue, or weather issue. That's when they travelers are angry, disappointed. How can you handle that in a very seamless manner for the consumer to reduce the frustration and the friction? So I'm not saying this is their first foray into solving that problem. We have been trying to solve that for many years. We have a lot of automation that happens behind the scene. Today, a lot of them are rule based. Hey, this flight is canceled. Let go ahead and rebook Moni on the next available flight and just update his send him a notification, update his mobile app. But with Generative AI and Agentic AI, there's a lot more options open up for the customer. For example, United already did. Hey, I see that your flight was canceled. I rebooked you automatically to the next available flight. Here's your new itinerary looks. But do you want to make any changes to it? So I can go back and say, hey, I know I'm flying to Atlanta. My flight is like late in the night, the rebooked flight. But do you have an option for me to fly me somewhere near? I know I can fly to Chattanooga, then I will drive or take a Uber to my home. So it opens up a lot more options for the travel and hospitality customers to interact with the customer and give them other options, better options, and give them flexibility to choose their destination or choose their option to rebook. And also, we sometimes when the disruptions happen, it's not just the travel segment that's affected, but also the stay. Right now, with Gen AI and the Agentic AI, customers are able to identify those related segments. For example, my flight is delayed from today to tomorrow. Hey, I see that you have a hotel booking. Do you want me to go ahead and adjust that booking? So it opens up a lot of options for the customers, for the travel and hospitality companies to treat their customers better.
Yeah, and I can see like when I'm talking with customers and partners, like a lot of times the question is how much contextual awareness can we give these tools, and how many data repositories and silos can we bridge to increase their overarching contextual awareness of the problem states that we're trying to address. This is what's interesting about what you're presenting here is, like, if we need to make like the airline and the hotel have enough contextual awareness of each other, even though these are separate legal, like these are separate business entities, to be able to say like, okay, airline, there's a weather event in Chicago because it's just it's December and that always happens, and hotel in San Diego, your downstream customer is going to get stranded in Chicago.
Yeah.
Like let's fix that for you. That's a pretty complicated thing that takes a lot of awareness of one individual's travel itinerary to be able to manage.
That is true. And we have an opportunity to bring a lot of those customers. Travel and hospitality is very lucky to have some of the leading industry customers running on AWS. So we have opportunity to bring those customers on the table and find ways to share the data, not the personally identifiable data, but using technologies like clean room and other ways of sharing information. So when an airline customer is impacted, and that's going to impact the hotel customers, we have ways to share that information so we can provide a better experience for the travelers and guests. Good point. I want to take a little bit of time, and I know we talked about this use case or agentic use case for travel and hospitality. One of the use cases that we looked at was travel assistance. How can we make this happen within AWS for a partner who wants to build a similar use case or a customer who wants to build a use case? It's not very complicated, but I will walk through this and ask me any questions if we have. So the number one here is the knowledge bases. For all this, we will have enterprise data that will be required for making this interaction happen or the travel assistant happen. For example, I say I want to book a Delta on United, But the booking engines don't use United. They use the two-letter code, right? The UA is United code. So we need a way to convert United into UA or Atlanta into ATL, LAX to Los Angeles to LAX. So those are the kind of information that we will store in the knowledge bases. It can be structured data, it can be unstructured data. It will be used by the LLMs to convert this acronyms that's used within the travel industry. That is number one. How do we convert the enterprise data into that's usable by the LLMs? And number two, the step two is the authentication that happens for the consumer when I log in. It can be enterprise, could be SSO. We can use Cognito, or it can be a social login. So the user logs in, they authenticate, and use a chatbot to request, as I said before, give me a 10-day trip to book me a 10-day trip to Greece. So that's the authentication, and then you API and Lambda to initiate that conversation with an LLM. And number three is an important aspect, right? The guardrails. How do we take this naughty request out of the chatbots? I mean, we don't want people asking politics and other things. So how do we use guardrails to avoid those things that we don't want to entertain? That's number three. Then once all this happens, the real action happens, right? So then there's the bedrock agents, or bedrock and the underlying LLM. We do see a lot of traction for Claude in our use cases, but we give the customer the option to choose the large language model they like to use. The decisions are mostly based on response time and accuracy, but the customer makes that decision, or the partner makes that decision. So the LLM at this stage identify the first, they identify the sentiment of the customer. If the customer is angry, there are actions that the LLM can take to address some of that. Or maybe he have the option to escalate if there is a need for an human agent to come in and resolve that problem. If request is a normal request, it can identify the actions, the flight number, the destinations, then all the information that's required for an agent to be activated. It can gather. Maybe there is an opportunity for the LLM to go back to the user, gather more data. All this happens between 2, 3, and 4. And once that all information is gathered, then that's where the agents come into play. Then the LLM forms a set of actions that it needs to take to make that request satisfied. So in our case, it can be the flight booking, it can be the hotel booking, it can be the Uber, Lyft booking, everything that needs to happen to satisfy the customer. So once that action is defined, then we get into action. So we will, first step, we are here, we're going a little bit deep into the industry technology here. First interaction is interacting with the loyalty database. For example, I'm a Delta SkyMiles member. So what is my Delta SkyMiles number? What is my passport info? All that required. Step 5, we gather that. Step 6, we make the booking interactions. And similarly, following, we can do the hotel bookings, Lyft bookings, things like that. And this flow, the step 7, doesn't have to be always about a new booking. It can be, oh, I already booked my trip to Greece. I want to come back and change it. Hey, the hotel that I'm staying is far from where I want to do things. So can you go ahead and rebook me to a different hotel? So it can also be a use case of changing itinerary. The travel assistant that I'm showing here will be able to do all those actions, not just new bookings, but also any updates to the existing bookings. So this is how, very simplistically, and the agents behind the scene, it can call a Lambda, it can call an API, it can be many different things. It is a simplistic way of getting a travel assistant implemented. There is 100 ways to implement it, but this is one way of doing it.
No, that's really cool. And I would love to get into it in even greater depth. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, as we always do. But where can our viewers find this if they are so inclined?
Oh yeah. So we have AWS Travel and Hospitality website for AWS. And if you go to aws.com/travel, you can find all this reference architecture, not just this one, many other reference architecture. And before you kick me out, I want to call out some of the partners that invest time with us and build generative AI solutions for us. Just flash them: NLX, PolyAI, ZS, Glean, Quantify, FireMind. Thank you for building this GenAI solutions for our travel and hospitality customers. We always appreciate it.
Very good, very good. Moni, thank you for joining us. Our viewers, thank you for viewing us. It is a pleasure, as always, to have Brian virtually next to me. So we'll see you again next Wednesday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific, where we talk all things generative AI and AWS partners and sometimes random other things as well.
Thank you.